What's going on, guys? It is MurderInc here with a really cool video for you. This was a ton of fun to make, and first of all, huge shout out to everyone who watched me on stream where I could make this monster of a team. And as you saw from the thumbnail and the title, this, without a really compelling argument, is the most complete land boss team in the entire game. Now this is a team using that 2-to-1 speed ratio as well as a counterattack. So essentially for both AoEs, you are getting 3 turns to 1 clan boss turn with that counterattack. And during the stun round, you are getting 2 turns. The amount of damage per actual turn count you're getting with this team is absolutely incredible. Before I get into the team too much, I do want to go over why I call this the most complete team and probably the best team in the entire game. So the first thing that it's going to come down to is consistency. How consistent is this team? So let me slide over really here and let's go over the damage. We have 11 million from Duchess, 13 from Michaud, 16.8 from Alton, 30.5 from Dracomorph, 10.2 million from Valkyrie. So those are really crazy numbers. Dracomorph's almost reaching that 2 key level by himself with this key. So now the questions I have to ask is, does it work for any affinity? How fast can you put it onto auto? How long does it take? And how many turns does it last? So these are the questions that I formulated together and what I based the entire claim off of, saying this is the best team in the game. So now what I want to do is I want to show you all of the different keys I did to show you the consistency first. Moving on to the second key, as we see 81.67, which is just slightly lower than the first one. Moving on to the key after that, we have 81.62 million. And for our fourth key from the sample, we have 80,000,029 damage. As we can see throughout those 4 keys, that is consistent. Now the next thing we have to talk about is affinity. For those of you who are looking, you do see a Valkyrie here. Everyone knows how Valkyrie's passive works on the affinity. So this pretty much just gets into what makes this such a complete team. For the first test, I did the red affinity, which has a huge collision with pretty much our 2 big damage dealers being Alton and Dracomorph, mostly Dracomorph. So while this key is significantly less than the 1 key by almost half, this is still a 2 key on affinity, which is very hard for a lot of players to achieve. The one thing to keep in mind here is that Valkyrie's turn meter gain from that buff being onto the clan boss does not affect the turn order on this team. The reason why this team is dying so early is because of that attack up buff, as well as obviously the weak hits from all of the champions also playing a major part. Now the next image I'm going to show you is blue affinity. This puts the decreased accuracy on the team, which, as you can imagine, can definitely cause some problems here. So once again, we still got 46.83 million damage, even with that weak affinity. And as some of you probably mentioned that I didn't mention in the last slide with the red affinity, Dracomorph also doesn't apply that defense down and weaken on the infinite clan boss when it's all the way past 0 health. That is a factor, however, that is going to be fixed very shortly in a patch. So I don't want to cover that too much because obviously this video is going to circulate and people could be watching this after it's fixed. So I don't think that's a huge point to make now. The main idea is even with all the weak damage and all the weak hits, this is still able to 2 key. And granted, if you are going to try and replicate this after the video and I go over the stats, even if you can't 1 key with this team, you're still going to be in a very good spot to 2 or 3 key any affinity with this team comp. Really quickly, while I have you on this kind of overview screen, the only champion you actually need to make all of this possible is Michaud. You can use any speed leader, any attack down, any person for Dracomorph, whether it's a Razin, and any counterattack champions you want. The only important thing to note, as mentioned already, if you are going to replace Duchess, you will need a speed leader, and if it's not 19% in all battles, if you want to use someone like a Fushan, that will actually reduce the speeds all of these champions need. You can just do the math to yourself based on what the aura does to the base speed and pretty much move on from there. So now that we went over the reasoning behind this team being the best in Raid Shadow Legends, let's go over how to set this up in the clan boss. First thing you're going to do is increase the speed on all of your members with Michaud. Then you're going to pretty much cycle through on your counterattack, cycle through on your secondary buffer. Now I'm going to go over this more in speeds and showing you if you are going to swap any of these champions out, what champions are best to put in which speed segment based on the debuffs that they apply for this clan boss. Next we're going to have Alton cycling with this A1, another cycle with Duchess, and as you could guess, Draco is the debuffing slot, so you're going to debuff with Dracomorph, A1 with the Mashald. Now this is the turn you're going to use counterattack, and for me it's going to be my Valkyrie. However, you are going to use an A1 first because she is actually going to go twice based on her speed. This is where you would use any buff from a champion in Alton's spot. So obviously defense up greatly impacts Valkyrie's shield, so we are going to use it in the second AoE. We're going to A1 with Duchess, throw on some poisons. With Dracomorph, we're going to speed buff once again. That's the beauty of Mashald. He keeps the speed up 100% of the time since it's essentially a 2-turn cooldown with this extra turn. And now is where we use our counterattack from Valkyrie. Now, if you watch the previous video of the speed composition without a counterattack, this is going to work the same. How it fully sinks as soon as it's on turn 9 to hit that 2-to-1 ratio. But the cool part is I'm only on turn count number 2. And this is probably equivalent to the Maneater teams. As soon as I hit the A1 with Duchess, I literally hit auto. And it's auto from here until the team wipes. What I'm going to do now for a little bit of, I guess, real-time application is I'm going to let this run until about, I would say, turn 42. Then I'll jump back on and we will go over the final rounds, going over probably the ending point on why this team is so good in the clan boss. So I will see you there. Alright guys, we are back. So as we're getting closer to round 40, one thing I did forget to do before this, which is going to be crucial, and I'm going to explain a little bit more on it, is I forgot to push into Platinum Arena before I did this. So if you know how the stun works, I'm going to hover over it really quickly. The stun, well, for one, it can't be resisted, but the damage inflicted is proportional to the enemy's max health. Now with this setup, I have it so Duchess is always taking the stun. So one problem I ran into, make sure I survived as long as possible, was making sure her health wasn't too high and her defense was very high, so she could survive that round 48 stun. Now in Platinum Arena, I can actually survive it with, I think, 45 health, which is incredible to see. However, since I'm in Gold Arena, I don't think I'm going to survive it in this run, so I want to start talking about this early. One thing some people might be looking at is, if Valkyrie has a 3-turn cooldown and you're going 2-to-1 turns, how is this going to work? So the reason why you have to delay the setup in the beginning when she goes twice in turn number 2 and use it on the second is because if you watch this run and how everything goes down, we will start it with the next round after this stun. Okay, so this stun went out. You're going to see Valkyrie burn her counterattack first here, and then she's going to go a second time. Now, by her going again in this turn, this leaves everyone with 1 charge of counterattack for this AoE, and it makes sure that there's 3 turns have passed before the next AoE. So that is how a counterattack works in this type of setup. Now that we're getting closer to turn 40, as we can see here, we're actually 20 million damage above if you're looking at 1 million damage per turn. So we have really good damage per turn going on right here. Now we did get some unlucky crits there, however, thankfully, because of Valkyrie's shield, we are doing pretty well overall. Now also, the AoEs are going to hit harder since I don't have that Platinum Arena bonus, so I'm kind of interested to see how this team does, since this is the first real test I've done in the Gold Arena. So it is looking like Duchess is going to die based on how much damage is being done. I guess it is possible, since Platinum does give a health and defense bonus, that the damage can stay the same since I reduced both evenly with that Platinum bonus, but we're going to find out together. So what I ended up having to do to make her survive the round 48 stun is actually using a +8 helmet, which you're going to see when I go over her gear, with a double roll on defense. That was the only way I could make her survive. That round because I cannot use a defense up buff on her, with Alton always scheduling his defense up to have direct synergy with Valkyrie. Let's look at this round 45 stun and see what it does to our Duchess here. So it is possible she survives with a little bit of health, however it doesn't look very likely, so I'm kind of interested to see how this plays out in a sense. I believe, yeah, it's definitely still going to one key this team, even in the gold arena. However, I'm definitely not going to hit that consistent number of the 80 million that I did show you before, unless by some miracle, Duchess does survive the round 48 stun. Now, outside of that, this is just awesome gameplay to watch. If you would like to watch more of this team running to get more comfortable with how it works, you can definitely go to my stream, check out the VOD, and you will see all of that information here. Now the moment of truth, let's watch this stun and see what happens to Duchess. Can she survive in Gold Arena? She cannot. Okay, so the overkill was about, based on her health, we're going to see in the video, I think it's 100 or 200. So that's where that happens there, and the team is going to wipe on the next AoE, so it's going to be turn 50 here. But still, a lot of fun to watch. I definitely shouldn't have made that mistake and remembered to get into platinum before this. There we have it. We have 10.3 million from Duchess, 12.1 from Ashald, Alton at 15.7, Draco 28.8, Valkyrie 8.7. Now, had I survived that next stun, I would be looking at wiping on the stun after that, and the team wipe would follow 2 AoEs after that. This damage is being done within 50 turns, the high end being turn 53. We're not going on and on, it's not a very long run, we're not pushing things to the limit. This is the efficiency of getting the most damage possible out of your team in the fewest rounds, so you're not looking at too much of RNG as far as an unlucky crit killing you in an AoE. And as I've mentioned in previous clan boss videos, the perfect team always has someone die to a stun. This is the example of how I built the team and why it's worked so well, because I pretty much live by that logic where if you're dying to an AoE, that means someone in your team isn't equally built to the rest of your team, which is why you're taking so much damage. The exception there would definitely be ally protection. However, for this team, we don't have that. We just have a damage reduction from Duchess and the Valkyrie shield. So outside of that, all of these stats are evenly tuned together to make sure the wipe condition is always on that stun target. What this also allows you to do is you can really push it to the max to see how far you can in fact go. So although I did a pretty good job with the 81, almost 82 million key, a lot of these champions don't have glyphs on them still. So I can definitely run more faction wars, add some speed, swap some gear around, get Duchess more defense. And if I can survive 1 or 2 more stun rounds, I can definitely get closer to that 90 million mark while staying under at least 65 turns. I think 65 is going to be the cap. Based on the rate of increase I'm going to need in my defense, I think eventually I'm just going to hit an impossible number. So I think 90 million damage for this specific team you see on the screen here is going to be pretty much the hard cap in damage. Maybe with some good luck it can go above that, but really there is no need to keep pushing it. Outside of that, I'm going to do it because I think it's going to be fun. So I'll do my best to keep everyone updated on streams if I can continue breaking the personal best once I add glyphs to all of my champions here. Now that that's sorted, let's go over the total stats. We have Alton at 208 speed. This is where I recommend, like I mentioned before, you keeping a champion that has any buff that's going to benefit your counterattack or your whole team during both AoEs. So obviously, you have to keep in line with Alton's 3-turn cooldown. If it's 3 turns, it'll always work at this 208 speed. If it is 4 turns, it will desync and pretty much shift throughout the entire battle. So these are his stats here. For Masteries, I do not have the offense trend everybody. To get the most out of every single champion, you want the counterattack on a debuff placement mastery on everyone on your team to give them a chance to counterattack when that stun does go out on your leader, whoever you choose to use. The next champion we have is Dracomorph. He is the one at 177 speed. This is the slowest champion on the speed. This is where you're going to use your Razin, your Tagrel, any champion that provides that debuff. This champion is going to go first at the start of the round. Duchess is the highlight champion. As mentioned before, I did gear her for the stun only. She still has a little bit too much health. If I can find a way to reduce that, which I haven't been able to so far, I could probably live longer. So she has 6,439 defense. At the moment, her crit rate definitely could be higher, which would improve the overall damage of the run, as you saw how hard Duchess can in fact hit, which I know is shocking to a lot of people when they see it for the first time. So here we have Duchess at 190 speed. That is the speed your leader aura champion is going to go. Now, one thing before I move on from Duchess, besides as mentioned before, I did use the +8 helmet to make sure her health was as low as possible. One thing to consider is, I highly recommend sticking exactly to these speeds, and this is why. You don't have a very good understanding of any speed calculators. By sticking with these speeds, you will be able to place certain cooldowns exactly where you want them based on the champions I'm showing you here. If you decide to go +1 here, -1 here, it can desync, and you have a less chance to succeed if you aren't aware of how to get full potential out of these speed calculators to see where your error is, who you can increase on that isn't the champion that you change the speed for, so on and so forth. So that's a very important point, and people often ask me why I say don't take Lore of Steel. That is the exact reason. You cannot replicate these speeds and you aren't comfortable enough with the speed calculator, which most people who are asking that question aren't, then I highly recommend hitting these exact speeds right on the dot. If you want to roll the dice, go one speed lower or one speed higher. It's possible it will desync, but you can definitely try it out if you have to sacrifice too many stats to hit that speed. Now, the next champion that I know everyone has been waiting to see is the speed of Valkyrie. She is 231, and as I showed you in the setup, this is where you're going to put every single counterattack champion with this speed. Now, Valkyrie, while she is very good, it's extremely hard to build her with this speed, simply for the fact that she needs a ton of defense to apply that shield. If you are going to use someone like a Skull Crusher or a Martyr, you can definitely focus more on damage, especially for a Martyr, and less on hitting 5.6 thousand defense. This isn't a ton of defense, but this was enough to let me survive all the way past turn 50 with Stalwart gear, plus the shield she provides. And the final champion we have here is Mashald. As mentioned earlier, this is the only champion you actually need to replicate this exact team. He is at 234 speed, doesn't have really impressive damaging stats since he is the fastest champion, and I wanted to keep him in Stalwart gear. Had I elected to make this a full damage team, which I never ended up testing because I had such good results from my first run in Stalwart. That's the basic rundown of this team composition and why I'm calling it the best clan boss team in Raid Shadow Legends. Now, on top of everything I've told you about Ultra Nightmare, shockingly enough, this team actually works with the same speeds in a Nightmare setting. And for me personally, I don't do any setup, since usually if you're going to gear a team for Ultra Nightmare, the gear is way beyond what you would need for Nightmare. So I just go into the run, hit auto, and let it run for 60, 70 million damage on Nightmare, which is awesome that it works in both and doesn't desync as bad as a unkillable team would that can put out as much damage as we're talking about here. As always, guys, thanks a bunch for watching the video. If you enjoy these kinds of videos, don't forget to subscribe, turn on that notification bell so you don't miss my next upload. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this video. I had a ton of fun working on this composition, and I really look forward to seeing you all in the next video.